All right, what's going on, everyone? Jamie here from Scareticulous. I watched Presence, the new Steven Soderbergh movie. It's a horror film, I suppose, is how it's being marketed. I think they're saying it's the scariest film in years or something like that. It wasn't, is the thing. It's not the scariest film in years. It's not even really that scary, to be honest. Like, it's more of a drama, which is honestly, that's what I heard. That was the buzz going around when I was hearing about the movie, that it was more of a drama. And I was kind of hoping that people were wrong. So I went to the theater and checked it out because, people seemed to be praising it. It seemed to be an interesting concept. The basic conceit of the film, if you don't know, is the entire movie is shot from the perspective of this ghost that's living in this house. This will be a spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry about me spoiling anything. But this is basically what's in the trailer. We get to see the perspective of this ghost living in this house, and then this new family comes in, and we start to see the dynamic in the family members is a little weird. It's a little off. There's a mother and a father, and there's brother and a sister, right? And there's, basically Lucy Liu is the mother, which honestly, she's kind of useless in this movie. She's kind of wasted. She doesn't really do that much. I feel like there's hints at something that's like a bigger role she might have had in this movie, but they don't really flesh her out, really. The father actually has more of a role. And if you guys are familiar at all with Steven Soderbergh's work, you will recognize the father. He's a bald guy with a beard. And here he's a little bit more like subdued, than this other character he portrayed in another Steven Soderbergh work, The Nick. If you've seen that TV show, I believe it was on Showtime or Cinemax or something like that. I can't remember. He played the what was, like, the paddy wagon guy. Like, he's basically carting off like bodies to the hospital and stuff like that guy. Remember? I don't know if anyone watched that show, but he played that. So Steven Soderbergh has worked with this actor before. He's a pretty decent actor in that show, and in this movie he is decent enough. I feel like the script isn't that great, to be honest. Like, I feel like the material they have to work with isn't as pro as it could be, especially for material like this. I feel like there's a sensitive story subject matter at work here, where there's a death where someone dies, and that's basically they find out that the family basically kind of knows this ghost, right? They're familiar to them, and there's all kinds of like ins and outs of the story where we get to know like what's the drama that played out there. They hint at things that have gone on. The husband even talks about things like that are hinting at a greater storyline there, but we don't ever really get to see it fleshed out, which is weird to me. It's almost like a lot of this movie was left on the cutting room floor because they didn't want to make like a 2.5 hour movie. So I do feel, because when this movie ends, I do feel like it's kind of abrupt. It feels like where it ends is almost like it comes a little bit out of nowhere. Like, we see it set up, but the conflict that plays out, it just kind of happens, and then the movie's basically over with like maybe 5 minutes left to go. And by then, it's like okay, that's it. The child actors were good enough, I suppose. There's this one actor, he plays like this blonde kid who's, I guess, like a kind of a douchey character, and you kind of suspect that there's something wrong with this kid, like right off the jump. He's just really shady. There's something about him, and it pretty much goes how you would expect. To be honest, there's not a lot of like twists and turns in this movie. Everything that happened, I pretty much saw coming. So in that sense, it's a little disappointing. I feel like for a horror film, like they should do things that kind of catch you off guard. It should be something that, it scares you, it shocks you, it goes in different directions, it twists and turns. It should do something that's more interesting than this mainly like boilerplate horror film, which it's not. I mean, the only way you can really call it a horror film is because it involves ghosts, which that does not a horror film make. There's been lots of ghost movies that are not strictly horror. So I don't really think that qualifies. There's not a lot of great scare. There's some like scares, I guess you could call them that, but they're they're very like muted. There's no flow of like you know when you watch a scary movie and you're going along the scene and there's rising tension, it gets scarier and scarier and then they finally terrify you with a jump scare. There's none of that in this. It's just not a very good horror movie. If that was what they were trying to do, which I don't know if Steven Soderbergh I think he wanted to make more of a dramatic movie, but maybe the studio or someone was telling him like, hey, you got to make this more like a horror movie because it's a ghost, you know, it's from the perspective of a ghost. I will give them some credit. The Foley, and, you know, all the sound and all that, like they managed to you know, take out all the sounds of like the cameraman moving around, because you know it's just the guy with a steady cam like moving around the room and around the house and stuff like that. So they have to figure out a way to like take out all the footstep sounds. So however they did that while recording in camera with the rest of the footage, like the actors acting and moving around, it's like that is something that actually interests me. Like, how did they do that? Like, just from a technical standpoint, how do they take out the cameraman, you know, his natural movements and like the sound of his footsteps and whatever else, you know? I'm kind of curious about that myself, because it does feel like they're recording all the sound, but they probably have a professional mic set up on the camera and that picks up all the sound that's in the room, because there's no, like, you know, there's no lapel mics, there's no boom mic. You can't even see a boom mic because they're going literally through the house. So it'd be impossible to put a boom mic there, you know, in the scene, because all the scenes basically bleed into one another. You know, they do have cuts in this movie, but for the most part, it's basically just like one continuous shot, and you're going from scene to scene and set piece to set piece, and it's like all throughout this house. They do have one little plot point that it's like this side tangent point that I feel like it goes nowhere. It's like this thread of a story point that I feel like that alludes to them leaving a lot of this movie on the cutting room floor. I think this was meant to be like a 2-hour plus movie. I think they were planning on putting more story in there, but we never really got to it. We're just kind of left to wonder, like, okay, I guess that meant nothing. Overall, I mean, it's a well shot movie. It's technically well made, but I don't feel like it's a particularly good horror film. As a drama, it sort of worked. Mainly, we're seeing things from the perspective of this little girl, this teenage girl. You know, she has her own traumas that she's going through, and we're kind of going along her kind of emotional journey through it. She's kind of the center of the movie. You would think it would be like the Lucy Liu character, but she's not. She's more of like an antagonistic figure in the film, along with the brother. The brother and her, they're kind of like a weird dynamic. Like it's almost like there's something more there that we're meant to get from that, but again, that doesn't go anywhere, and it's just a little weird detail. It's almost like you're meant to pick up on a detail that never pays off, you know, and that's leaves you a little unsatisfied at the end. Overall, I think I would give this movie, I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars, because it just wasn't a very good horror movie. And that's why you would go to see this movie. You know, you go to see like genre movies for a particular reason. You know, you go to see a comedy because it's funny. You go to see a horror movie because it's scary. You go to watch an adventure film because it's got great adventure. You know, you're not just sitting in a room the whole time doing nothing. I mean, there is something here where I feel like they could have made it scarier, and there was just zero horrific tension in this movie, like none. The movie just doesn't have what it takes. It just doesn't have that sauce, you know, that you need for a good horror film. I think even the Smile movies were a million times better than this movie, like in terms of scares, in terms of like actually dreading, like that foreboding fear that you have. And there's just none of that. I thought maybe we'd get some like creepy vibes because it's from the perspective of the ghost, but we're just not really getting it. And that's kind of disappointing. I mean, it is a January movie, and a lot of January films tend to not be very good. That just tends to be the trend. That's why they stick them in January. They're just like, here, release it in January, and that's it. I gave it a 2.5. It's technically well made, which is basically what I'm giving the 2.5 stars for, is for the technical achievement of making the film itself. But in terms of what it's setting out to do, I don't think it succeeds particularly well, either as a horror movie or a particularly emotional drama that I can really invest into and feel something for. So that's my review of Presence. I hope you liked the video. Please give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.